the complex project in a smaller workflows, right? So when we create the smaller workflows, that we can easily build or that we can easily test, right? So once we create that can be built and tested separately, and later we can integrate whole that part later and to the main workflow. That means we need to break the code, or you can say we need to break the complex project in a smaller workflows, right? To integrate the workflow to main workflow, specified workflow is involved by the invoke workflow file activity, right? So we'll just open this UiPath Studio and we'll see how this invoke workflow file activity is used, right? How we can use the arguments over there, right? What do you mean by the local variable? What do you mean by the global variable? Okay, how we can access that variable? Okay. Okay, so which activity is this? Invoke workflow file, right? Invoke workflow file activity. Okay, so here if you see, we have multiple workflows, right? We have sequence 1, sequence 12, sequence 2, you can say sourceflies.cs or workflow.xml. So I have used multiple files here, right? Just consider an example. For example, I want to get some data from a particular application. Like for example, if I want to take a data from an Excel file, and then I want to put that data in a particular application. So how we can divide this project? First, when we create the code, when we create the workflow for this sequence 1, I'll use this, or here I'll just use to take input from the Excel file. So get Excel data, right? So whichever code which I required to get data from the Excel file, I can write that code inside this workflow, right? And later if I want to put some data, or I want to put the data in a particular application, for example, so I'll just use data updation app, like that. Okay, so I have created two things here, like data updation app.xml, then you can say get Excel data, right? And similarly we can use multiple, you can say, workflows here. Okay, fine. Then now what I'll do, now for example, this is my main sequence, right? Because as we know, when we run the program of the UiPath code, so my first execution will start from the main. Okay, for example, suppose here I write some code. For example, here I'll use just like this, welcome to the session, or whichever code which I have write. Later what I need to do, I need to execute this file, right? I need to execute this flowchart demo, because this is my first sequence, right? Or you can say this is my get Excel data, this is my first sequence. So that what I'll do, I'll just drag this get Excel data, and I have just pasted that file here, right? Again, then next I have this flow, right? Data updation flow. So here again I'll just drag this data and just paste the data here. That means first this activity get executed, then second this activity get executed, and third this activity get executed. Okay, this is my flow. Okay, this is a different file and this is a different file. So in this way also we can create the flow, right? I can directly drag this file and I can paste that file here from this activity. The second thing, we have invoke activity file, or you can say invoke file activity. So if I'll go inside this activity panel, right? So we have, see, invoke workflow file, right? Invoke workflow file. Which activity we have? Invoke workflow file. If I'll double click on that activity, you will see invoke workflow file, and here you will see workflow file name. Now which file or which workflow I want to include here, right? So for that, if you see workflow file name here, I need to paste that path here, workflow path, right? So here we have this folder option and we have this 3 dot option. So here what I'll do, I'll just simply click on this folder option. Once I click on this folder option, you will see we will see this pop-up is came for me, okay, and I'm already inside this folder location. You can see demo_sap batch. Now from here I can choose any flow which I want to include here, right? For example, if I want to include this flow chat demo, so I can include that as well, right? So two way you can include that flow in the main sequence. One, as I said, invoke workflow file, you can use that invoke workflow file here. Otherwise, if you already create that file, right, so directly you can drag that file here as well. So both way you can do, okay, as I shown you. So for example, suppose I want to execute this flow here, so you can directly use this sequence to here as well. So you can use these two methods to include the existing file in a main.xml. Now once I execute this, first main dot sequence, this right line will get executed. Later my execution go for the flowchart_demo. Once I click on this open demo, then this code will execute, okay. Later this code get execute, then this code will get execute, and later this code will execute, right? So this way you can prepare your workflows. And one more thing, we can give the name as well, right? We can give the proper naming convention as well. For example, here if this is my flowchart demo, so I can use this sequence is for flowchart. So this is my for example, I want to put some name here like get Excel data. I'll just use simple get Excel data, right? And here if I want to put some name, to then I can mention that name as well. So that way we can put some name as well here, right? Now one more thing, right? This is fine. This way we can create our project, real-time projects, right? Or any projects, right? Now one more thing, for example, now this is my main.xml. Main.xml itself is a file, right? It's an file, right? Now we have like variables, right? We have arguments and we have imports, right? Now for example, now in this variable panel, I have two variables. I'll just create one variable here. For example, I simply create var int1, okay, with type you can say integer. And what is the scope of this main dot sequence, right? So I have created this variable var int1. So this is, you can consider this variable as a local variable for main.xml. Local means the accessibility of that variable is only limited to that particular, you can say, workflow or to that XML file. Now I have created one variable inside the main.xml, so that I can only access that variable inside the main.xml file. For example, here now I'll just simply use, you can say, var int dot toString because this is you can say right line, so that's what I need to convert that integer value to toString, or you can say in the string. That's what I have used, var int dot toString, right? So I can use this variable throughout my main.xml file. Here also I can use, again, if I want to use that variable, so here also I can use that variable. For example, if I want to if I just take one assign activity, so that variable I can access here as well. See, var int, right? Var int 10. Okay, so that variable I can access here as well. So this variable is called as the local variable because the accessibility of that variable is only limited to that main.xml. I cannot access this var int1 variable in the, for example, the sequence2, because the sequence2.xml is a different workflow, or you can say this is a different XML file. Now here see, again we have the variable panel, right? Again we have the argument panel, again import, right? So I cannot access that variable if I want to access that var int. So here we don't have that accessibility of that var int. Again, for example, if I want to do some logic here, so again I need to create one more variable. For example, here I can use var int2. I am creating var int2 and I'll just make this variable type as an integer. Scope is equal to sequence2. Now I can easily use var int2 and I'll just make this as a 56. Again, this is again var int2 is a local variable for this sequence2. Okay, this var int2 is a local variable because I can only access this var2 in the sequence2. Right. Now again, if I want to perform some operations inside this data updation app, then again I need to create one more variable inside the, you can say, this data updation app.xml. This all are the local variable, right? So local variable is a variable that we can only access on a particular XML or on a particular workflow. We have the global variable as well. Global, right? This term or this word itself consider global variable. Now for example, just consider I want to create a variable and I want to assign a particular value for that variable, and I want to access that variable value throughout the all you can say workflows, or you can say XML files. Like if I want to create some variable, like for example var underscore globe, and I'll just assign that value equal to 10. And if I'll make that variable as a global, then I can access that variable throughout all these workflows, 1, 2, 3, okay, 4, or you can say whichever workflow or whichever the XML files we have created, I can directly access that variable as we have created that variable globally. Okay, so how we can create that? So for that we'll simply use, right, for example, now if this is all about, you can say this is sequences. Now for example, we have one workflow, right, flowchart underscore demo. Now for example, in this flow, see, this is, now for example, this is my another sequence, this is my another sequence, this is my another sequence, and this is my another sequence. Now, and all the sequence, or you can say all this workflow, are stored inside this flow inside this flowchart underscore demo scope. Now if I'll create the var day, here I have already created the var day as integer 32, right? So this is a global variable for all the sequences or for all the workflow which I have created here, right? So local variable and global variable. What is the difference between local variable and the global variable? Global variable, the variable which we can only access on a particular workflow. But if I'll make that variable as a global, then I can access that variable throughout my project, right? So there are different ways how we can create the global variables that we will see in the later session, right? We can create that variable in a Excel, particular Excel, and we can access that Excel variable throughout my whole project, right? In detail way we will see in the next videos. Okay, now we will see how we can how we can create the arguments. Okay.